Good morning. Welcome to myself, Max McGillivray, and Beanstalk.Global in our set series of webinars on very topical subjects of the day. Today, we are very blessed to have some fantastic expert speakers to talk on the subject of food service. And just to give you a bit more of an understanding, if you're not fully aware yet of Beanstalk, because it's fairly new out of the traps, Beanstalk is the social enterprise that supports, educates, and promotes the global fresh produce industry to help it thrive and grow faster. We wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for our sponsors behind me. Very quickly look to accelerate the growth of Beanstalk to the full, so that we can educate not only the trade of everything that's going on, but also ultimately the consumer. So we're doing 2 of these webinars a week as we go through this period, with more elements to come that we'd love you to be part of. We'd also like to thank you, the viewers of the webinars that we've run to date. We've had over 5,000 collective views, and we're getting about 1,000 to 2,000 views per each, either live or on the recording. So the main point of this is your participation. You've got the full opportunity with this system, with Zoom that everyone's getting used to now, to throw any questions at us so that I can present them to our panel, either now or post the event. What I want to do is just introduce briefly to our speakers. So we're just going to run round them. So let's start with the lady with the smartest piano in town, Kate. Say hello to everyone. And where are you today, Kate, please?
Hello, I'm speaking from Birmingham.
Excellent. And Scott, where are you sat today, please?
Good morning, guys. I'm dialing in from Suffolk on a beautiful sunny day.
Excellent. Ton, with your amazing picture behind you, where are you, please?
Good morning, all. Well, we're in Edinburgh here, and the sun is shining brightly.
Excellent. And Mark, we just saw your lovely Labrador. We'd love to see your Labrador again in a minute. Where are you sat today, please?
Just sat in sunny Birmingham.
Excellent. And last but not least, William. William, where are you, please?
I'm at home near Peterborough.
Excellent. And William and I, when we were testing the tech yesterday, William's got this lovely home studio. And if you notice over William's right shoulder, he's got some slightly unusual things. And I said to him yesterday, William, what are those bottles of, they must be whiskey. They look very special. William, show everyone your bottles of whiskey, please.
So I've got this one signed by Margaret Thatcher.
Wow.
Never opened. I've got this one signed by David Cameron. And last but not least, Bojo. That was my mother-in-law.
So William, that prompts the obvious question. Mrs. May, how come you haven't got a bottle of whiskey signed off by Mrs. May?
No, she is missing. I need to get that one. So if anyone can help with that, please do. I was going to write it down, actually, see if she'd sign one for me.
Excellent. I love the way these webinars are set up, that everyone's got a slightly different background. One of the speakers from last week, who shall remain nameless, did a couple of different webinars on the same day. And the second webinar host realized that they changed some of their books from Dan Brown's to slightly more educational books, perhaps to show that they were even more intelligent than they already are. So we'll have to see what people come up with the next set. So guys, let's get into this, because we've only got an hour. So I went with a fairly emotive title for this talk, this presentation, of the food service sector today and tomorrow. But will there be a tomorrow for the sector when we emerge from COVID-19? And as we all know, that the last couple of weeks has just been unbelievable, especially in the respect of the change for the UK food service operators, as the government announced total social distancing. That meant dine-in places had to close. You obviously be aware that some of the food service operators look to pivot and look to serve the consumer direct, but that seems to, in some respects, have dwindled out. So what I wanted to do today is, with these key individuals that we've managed to garner today, I want to get their views as to where they feel the food service sector is, either on an educational or a membership basis, but also in real time. So Scott, can we turn to you? And we were just mentioning it just as we went live. Scott, we've followed for ages. Scott is one of the best producers of coffee, not only in Suffolk, because you're now broadening out. Great name, great brand, great social content. Scott, tell us where you were, say, a month ago, and tell us where you are today, please, if that's okay.
Yeah, look, guys, I mean, we were riding a crest of a wave. That we had a fantastic year last year. We farm our own coffee in Kenya. We have a community project there. We just signed long 5-year contracts with the likes of Green King, Marriott. And I was sitting there thinking, life isn't going to get any better. I mean, this was everything that you work for as an entrepreneur running a small business. And it seems like that 90% or 95% of my business has been cut off. I supply to hotels, bars, restaurants, leisure centers around the world, and it's in complete lockdown. So at the moment, we are desperately trying to increase our web orders, but it's difficult to move our business because we're not geared for individual small orders. We're geared for pallet drops. We're geared for machinery that has to make our coffee. So, but we will get through the other side. I promise you, we will get through the other side. And I absolutely believe that your integrity, your honor, your how you handle your staff, your suppliers, that will far make up for the loss of my balance sheet when I get out the other end. And I promise you guys, we will come out the other end. And I promise you, we'll be a better company for it.
Scott, well done. Cometh the hour and cometh the man. We love what you've been posting up on LinkedIn because we think you're so brave in just being very candid and open as to where you are currently. And I can see that from that, people are looking to support you in the respects of buying your coffee. So it goes without saying that when we do the follow-up on this link, buy Scott's coffee because it is brilliant, but also we'd love to help you as a business. Ton, can we just turn to you, especially you have been in control of some very large food service businesses in the UK and in Europe. What is your view? What is your take of the current situation, please?
Well, as you can imagine, we go to enormous transformation, and it will never ever be the same again. Never ever. Will be complete reset, and food service, as a matter of fact, is at the heart of this reset because it will change the way we travel, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we meet, the way we work. You see, for instance, a company like Zoom, the software we now use, has a larger market cap than any of the US airlines. So, instead of physically going somewhere, there will be more and more digital interaction. And that obviously will go at the expense of traditional food service outlets as we know them. I just picked up the Financial Times this morning, and it's quite interesting just to see what you can read actually today, which is all related to the development we're going through. Carluccio went into administration. You see that Yum Brands, KFC, is trying to raise $500 million to overcome today's situation, giving out, in essence, a junk bond, which is 9.5%. So it's really changing the complete scenery. And obviously, as I said, food service will be at the heart. Retail went up. You saw the Kantar figures probably this morning, 20.4% increase. People are more consuming at home. Obviously, there's a lot of stockpiling, but people will learn how to cook. Some of them actually might like it and might figure out that it's cheaper. So, they will not go back to restaurants. So I see out-of-home consumption, at least losing 25% structurally, in all fairness. Wow. Retail is winning, as we can see. Home cooking is winning. Home delivery is winning. You can easily now have a fresh pasta delivered or a couple of bottles of wines, 300-400 miles distance, and people will put it on their doorsteps. So this is really big, and it's far bigger than anyone I think might envision yet, because we don't know. We try to look in the future. There will be a lot of government drive as well behind that transformation and change. There will be more local production. There will be shortened supply chains because you don't want to be dependent on foreign imports of products and food products in particular. So it will be more expensive, therefore, the food. We have to revisit the whole Brexit arrangements because we need people to work on more local farms. There will be more appreciation for agri. Might even be a change of opinion about GMO. So the whole food sector will change so dramatically we can't even envision. But unfortunately, if you look at all that, I think food service and out-of-home consumption will suffer. And I don't really see any real positive scenario, if you like, for that particular sector as we speak.
Because Ton, I suppose there's a double whammy on this one. That's when we can't go out, and then as Kate and I were just talking about earlier, there's going to be a number of people who are going to have very depressed incomes. So when we hopefully do recover from this, and the restrictions are eased, we're not going to go out to eat. We are going to try and keep at home because we won't have the money to go out.
Yeah, no, I agree. But that's just the money side. And it will not be helped by the fact that everything will become more expensive because of local production, lack of workers, and so on and so forth. But it's not just that. It's just that I think people have discovered that there is a different world now. Don't forget, there will be a generation now, like, my son and younger kids, 10, 11, whatever, but, younger children for whom this whole difference between the real world and the digital world is actually going to disappear completely, as a matter of fact. So it would be very, very normal to start having stuff delivered at home, maybe have, meetings, if you like we have now on a digital platform, while at the same time you have your own food and your own. So it will really be completely different.
Ton, it's fascinating how everyone from Chris Evans on the radio to politicians are using the same word, reset. Feels like there's going to be a reset. William, can you just give everyone a bit of a background as to Produce World, your group, who you serve, and what your take is of the current situation, please?
So my business, Burgess Farms and Produce World Group, we've got two divisions, an organic farming and packing business and a conventional farming and packing business. We grow root vegetables and potatoes, mainly in East Anglia, but some further afield. We've got a site in Scotland as well, near Inverness. We supply retail and food service, but we're predominantly retail. So we're seeing a big uplift in demand at the moment. It's starting to flatten out a bit this week.
And William, is that on retail, but presumably not on food service?
Yeah, not on food service. Food service sales are obviously well down, but not to zero. As I think a lot of the food service outlets are learning to deliver through other channels and direct to consumers. But yeah, we're seeing it flattening out a bit. I think it's going to settle at about 10 to 15% above where it would be normally this time of year. But we're coming to the end of our UK season in May, June. So we're just trying to make sure we've got enough crop to go to the end, which I think we will, but it's going to be a bit tight.
Okay, and thoughts for the next season? Because I was talking to Kate earlier that I was speaking to a potato expert yesterday, and they seem to be very concerned as to the next season because there's no contracts coming out because no one knows what's going to happen next week, let alone 2-3 months down the line. What's your views about next season and feeding the nation?
Well, I think it's quite late in the day to change our programs for next year's cropping. So we're having a debate whether we do try and increase our cropping for next year. And I think a lot of farmers will be. Of course, this is on the back of a very wet winter and spring, early spring. And, there's still some potatoes in the ground from last season, which haven't been harvested and they're not very good when they come out. But so, yeah, it could be very interesting. Now, I think the problem with trying to increase acreage is getting the seed and getting the quality seed to do it. So, I think it's going to be interesting. On the other hand, food service demand has fallen, so some of the product that would have gone through the food service chain is obviously available to come through the retail chain.
Okay. So William, thank you. Just swap it over to Mark. Mark, can you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what's your view within your sector, within your community, trade-wise, as to what your take is, please?
Well, I mean, we work predominantly with small independent caterers and quite often street food traders, and festival caterers, event caterers, and people that do corporate events. So our market has literally disappeared overnight.
Mark, can you just help us? Just tell us what you do and your official title.
Yes, sorry. So I'm a director of a trade association. We support over 6,500 independent catering businesses by providing them with the tools they need to be safe, legal and profitable. So we provide whole management systems, due diligence systems, training, that kind of thing, so that quite often startups can get started and get off on the right foot, and then get enough work to continue their business. So a lot of the guys we work with are micro businesses, sort of mom and pop teams, or two mates, that kind of thing, have an idea, want to be food entrepreneurs and create a food business. Wow. So we have about 6,000 of those guys. And in terms of timing, the COVID pandemic couldn't have been worse, really, because we're a seasonal business. Well, our customers are very seasonal. So the whole outdoor events and mass gatherings sector just got shut down, and will be probably for the rest of the summer. And obviously, because we're seasonal, that means it's next year before we've got a chance of earning a living again. So in the short term, pretty drastic. So we're looking at about, at the moment, we're looking at about 70% of our industry are looking to mothball for a year. 70%? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that was a survey we put out on Friday. So that's pretty sort of recent data. So yeah, but what we're looking now to do is to reposition an entire sector to be able to deliver for this new economy, this reset economy. And I think that is a critical point, really. And it's actually a case of us saying to our customers, what was going on before, that's not coming back. And what we need to do to stay in business is to find new ways and new markets to deliver to those, and new markets and new ways to deliver to those markets. So we are currently looking along various different lines, such as small scale ready meals, delivery businesses. We're pretty convinced that takeaway will be removed as an option within the next month or two.
Mark,
yeah.
sorry, can we just highlight that? You think takeaways will be removed because of the social distancing? That will be then, right? Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I just don't think that it's the best way to do it. I think that the idea of people queuing up for food they want, whether they're 2 meters apart or not, you're just going to have really long queues. It's going to fall apart. It's going to break down. People are going to get annoyed. It's way easier if you either have a very simple click and collect where you're not loitering in any way, or you have a delivery system in place.
Okay. And I'm not trying to be alarmist or defeatist, but on the basis that we might be in this situation for 3 to 6 months, is it possible for these people to mothball the great, fantastic businesses for this period of time? Or should they just give up and go in a different direction in the respect of, we need 80,000 people in the fields this summer to pick crop? Should we be directing them that way? What's your view? What's your advice?
Well, I mean, being a great chef doesn't make you a great fruit picker. And, I think that there's a lot of talk, certainly within industry, has gone on in the last couple of weeks about how we've gone from being unskilled labourers to being key workers. And I think that part of that discussion should consider those guys who are fruiting those fields and crops in those fields who maybe weren't British, but maybe were doing a very good job. So I don't think that you can replace a workforce of 10,000 well-drilled, experienced farm workers with 10,000 people on the dole in the UK. I just don't think that's a fair representation of what's possible. I mean, I don't know if William would be keen to take on loads of guys to the local job office.
The truth is that they wouldn't be able to do the job anything like as well and as productively as the Eastern Europeans.
Okay.
So,
well, in any case, it's now talked that this whole Brexit thing will be extended with 5 years. Whether that will happen or not, that remains to be seen. But there's a lot of pressure now on the government to use obviously the Corona situation as an excuse, if you will, to extend that transition period. And I would not be surprised, because obviously there are negotiations at the moment. Everyone is in shock, so I think they would be able to get away with it.
Ton, as you use that word shock, this is going to be, some of people already intimated, this is going to be the biggest financial shock to our system since the Second World War. To then put Brexit on top of it at the end of the year might be a step too far. William, what's your thoughts on that, please?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it'd be good if they did postpone, because I think to throw another level of massive uncertainty at business, in the next few months would be extremely damaging. But I don't know. It comes down to politics, doesn't it? I think Boris would be reluctant to postpone 5 years, because he probably won't get re-elected. Whether he will anyway, I don't know. But
history shows. I don't want to give the Winston Churchill example, but history shows. We'll have to see. So, yeah. Kate, coming over to yourself. I've left you to last for the reasons you'll be aware of. Tell everyone about yourself and your take on the current situation, please.
Okay, I run the Birmingham Food Council. It's a KIC. It's a very, very tiny organisation, subsidised de facto by my pension, incidentally. And let me just describe a little bit of what goes on in Birmingham, because I think we're not unique in this way, though the problems of food supply are extreme here. We're a population of between 1.1 and 1.2 million people. And 56%, according to a survey in 2018, 56% of Birmingham citizens live in the most deprived areas of the United Kingdom, the bottom 20 percentile. 1 in 4 of our children live in poverty. That was before all of this. Food banks around here a lot of them have closed. And one of the reasons why is because the people who work in food banks are often very vulnerable people for one reason or another, including age. Yeah. And we have enormous levels of poverty. 2018, 128,655. I'm not quite sure where the 5 come from. So nearly 130,000 children aged between 0 and 15 years old live in the most deprived 10% of areas in the United Kingdom. There are people who don't have enough to eat. There are people in this city who don't have the right nutrients to eat. And that was before all of this. And our local authority is doing all it can, and our local voluntary sector are doing an enormous amount to try and find out where these people are. And who knows where they are. And add to that, I think of my own personal family, and I have grandchildren, and both families, one already has had an income that's just crashed. The other has got an income that will crash quite soon. Okay. We're going to have enormous numbers of poor people. And one of the things that I think is really important to understand is that the ultimate responsibility for the food sector cannot be carried by people like in the food sector. I am in awe, trust me, I'm in awe of what the food sector has done. I think it is astonishing to watch the reconfiguration of the food supply system as it is. But that we are going to have things down the line and particularly with the supply of nutrients. That's going to be a major issue. And the effects of lack of nutrients are felt almost immediately by people. You get grumpy and you get stroppy. That's a start, and that's without all the other things, rickets and vitamin A deficiencies and everything. It is the government's responsibility under the United Nations to ensure that their population has access to sufficient supplies of safe, nutritious food. It absolutely is. And how we can manage to do that, and I actually think the food service, the kinds of things Mark's been talking about, are a way of doing it, but we have to be able to supply nutritious, safe food to very large numbers of people who can't afford to buy it.
Understood. Kate, question for Scott and then Mark, because you guys are right in it. What do you want now? What do you want from the government?
Hey, look, guys. I mean, for us, it was a case. We need people to pay us, and our supply. We're owed hundreds of thousands of pounds from our debtors book, and we were expecting £44,000 to come in on Friday. We received 1,290 quid, or just over £1,300. So what I want is, if people are going to start, attacking, then please just make any payment. Just keep the money coming through, and that will allow me in turn to pay my suppliers. I've already agreed. I've gone on to. We're going to pay all of our creditors. I promise you that now. I've set up payment plans for my key suppliers. I've made sure my staff are being paid. And I think things are going to change, guys. We're going to have to reset the whole thing. But the world won't stop. And companies like me will just have to adapt. We're just going to have to look at other ways of getting our coffee to people. We're going to look at other ways of supporting our bars, restaurant, hotels. We're just going to have to, and this is a challenge. And I'm up for the bloody challenge, guys. I'm not going to crawl under a bloody little stone and not do anything about it. My team are there. And I've had amazing, excuse my passion, but I've had some amazing support from the board of Green King, the procurement directors at Marriott, Fuller's. These people are there to help my company when we get through this shitstorm, and we will get through it. But guys, come on, if we keep sowing, and it's not in this conference call, because I know there's some really incredible stuff. And Kate, you make an absolute, there are people dying, and there are people, we mustn't forget that. So I understand the severity. I get it. I'm with you. But I'm a coffee producer. I make people feel better by creating little cups of ambition. And if I can't do that, well, where do we go? But look, guys, I can't give you stats from the BBC. I'm going to say to you what comes from my heart.
So Scott, in the short term, you need money. You need your creditors to pay you, and what the government has looked to introduce in the respect of the furlough scheme. Has that been advantageous to you? Was that helped you?
We of course, because we know there's money coming. When it's coming, I don't know. Now, I've managed to stockpile some cash so all my employees will stay on the furlough scheme for as long as I can, and I'm hoping I'm going to get that money back. Because I think what a lot of people don't realise is that I've still got to pay my staff every month.
Yeah,
I've still got to trigger that payroll. 50, 60, 70,000 pounds a month. I've still got to pay on the hope that the government will give me that money back.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is put together. My bank's been brilliant. HSBC have been brilliant. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a loan on place so I can pay my suppliers, so I can make sure the supply chain keeps on going. And then that way, when I come out, yes, it's going to be a new landscape, but at least my honour, my tact, my integrity will be there. And I'm hoping other people do the same thing as well, because we are being supported. Cash has gone up much better this week. I think people are starting to pay us. People are understanding the severity of the problem, and they are now starting to support smaller businesses. So, from the heart, guys, thank you everybody that's listening.
Well done.
I like that comment from Scott, because obviously the first 30 minutes of this call has all been doom and gloom. But at the same time, what we do discover during this, adverse time is a lot of people supporting each other, charities, businesses. Obviously, what we do need is strong leadership, making changes, and also some unpopular changes, if you like. But things that were not possible maybe a month ago are actually discussed today. I mean, there was yesterday on a radio program, people talking about central banking, people talking about Eurobonds, for instance. Which was unthinkable of only weeks ago. And it's just some sort of a solidarity concept where Northern European countries would support, Southern European economies. Just that this sort of concepts do emerge and will happen. The other thing I think is technology. I mean, there's so many, this situation will drive so many technological developments that will make life, more interesting, life better, will help businesses to survive, will develop new business models. Because in the end, whether it's coffee or other type of foods, I'm personally also in the beef business, as you might have guessed by the painting behind me. We will get that food in the end on the plate of the consumer. And whether that's retail, home delivery, food service, I don't think people will stop consuming, right? So it's just for us to reinvent who we are, how we can deliver that product to the consumer, and of course there will be winners and losers. as Scott also has indicated, he will be a winner. Why? Because he will reinvent himself. There will be other people just, staying negative or don't see the future, and obviously they will suffer. That is the reset. We said it earlier. That is the change that obviously is coming to us.
Tom, well done. I think I owe an apology to Mark, because there was me saying to him about his 1,000-odd members' connections that, well, can't they just change and go pick fruit in the field? We've then got Scott, the most passionate man in Suffolk. He's going through hell and looking to reinvent himself. And I'm guessing, Mark, you got 1,000 people just like Scott.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that, I'd agree with Scott and Tom, really. I think that this is a reset. It's about how we evolve our businesses and how able and agile we are at doing that. It's just a different and new opportunity, and how we react to that opportunity is going to be critical. I think that we don't know yet how the world is going to evolve, or how this situation, or how food service will evolve as we come through this crisis. But that's kind of for us to determine in the moves that we make and the opportunities that we take. So, I've got a guy who was literally in tears on the phone to me on Thursday night. He had been running a business part-time for 12 months. It was going really well. Him and his partner had both had full-time jobs. 2 months ago, they realised they had a whole year's worth of work. So they quit their jobs, went full-time as street food traders. And on Thursday, they found out that they're going to be earning £94 a week through the Universal Credit Scheme. And he was absolutely broken, because the amount that his life has changed, or seems to have changed, in 24 hours or 30 days, whatever it may have been, was a lot for him to take on board. We had a good long chat about it. It only actually stopped with the NHS clap that was going round. So I was like, well, we were on the phone for so long. I was like, what is that racket? And realised that it was outside clapping, so I hung up the phone. But I spoke to him yesterday, and one of the things we talked about was, people aren't going to have money. People aren't going to go out looking for treats necessarily. They're certainly not going to be having treats on a regular basis like they do now. And I think similar way to when street food came out of the recession, we used to call it recession chic, or the credit crunch. We called it recession chic because it was people finding new ways to do something brilliant with less. And I think that what we're going to see now is more affordable food that's more accessible, that's healthier, and more people will be aware of it. I think there's a lot of positives will come from a very tragic situation.
Mark, well done. It's fascinating just reading some of the posts that are coming up. I don't know if you guys can see it, but just to read out too, and it all revolves around you, Scott. From David, I absolutely love Scott's positivity. Yes, this is what we all need to drive everyone in the right direction. We can get through this together. And then Mark comes back, another Mark. Can't agree with you more, David. This is what it is, and we will get through it. There's no other option. Scott's positivity is fantastic, and we all have to be agile. No one knows yet how this will all evolve in any sector, never mind food and service. Together is the only way forward. So Mark, just to come back to you on the basis that the government have done what they've done, it's now up to everyone. There's always a positive from a negative. Look at Scott. It's just up to everyone individually and collectively to forge this new way. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been jokingly saying to a few colleagues that it's a real opportunity that that Greggs and McDonald's have kind of left the market for 3 months. There's now an affordable space for affordable food that someone could fill, and we don't know if they will. But I think that there's, wherever there's a risk, there's also an opportunity. So I think that our guys many of them will evolve new and brilliant ways of doing business. And I'm not as concerned as maybe I should be, but I think that there's new markets out there. People will always need to eat. It's just about how we get that food to them in a way that they like, and that may change, but we'll work that out. Well done, Kate. You've been messaging through the system whilst we've all been talking. Kevin asked the question of what are the panel's thoughts on the logistics impact, and our Kate has put back, in all crises is logistics. Kate, can you explain your answer, please? Yes, I can. What you have in the food sector, you've got all this stuff, like, for example, the sudden closure of the service sector, much of the service sector. There was a lot of food around, it was just in the wrong place. And that's classic in any crisis. It doesn't matter what the crisis is.
it's always the logistics. It's getting face masks to hospital workers. It's getting beef and spuds to people. And logistics and distribution are the unsung heroes, it seems to me, in the food sector. They are just, and they have been astonishingly good. And the way in which the dramatically increasing number of poor people, and it is dramatic, and it involves, you know, my family, for goodness sake, who never thought they would have a problem with being able to buy food. And that's, you know, everywhere. It seems to me that how we can get imaginative ways of getting tasty, good, nutritious food to a population. We have chefs, we have some food, we're going to have shortages, but the way in which the food sector can reimagine itself to deliver food to everybody, it needs government help, absolutely does. And certainly we don't need Brexit, but it's the likes, it seems to me, of both the large companies, but also the small companies who have the agility to be able to turn on a dime. People like you, Scott, and your guys, Mark. You have skills, I mean, not just in coffee, Scott, you could do an awful lot of other things as well, because you can turn on a dime. And it seems to me that that is terribly important.
Well, I'm completely here with Kate, because I think the government, there should be new leadership, and there should be, you know, a certainty that we can feed, you know, the population. The supply chains are, you know, are completely wrong at the moment to a certain extent. Many products have to be imported. Bacon, 80% of the bacon we consume in the UK is imported. Over 60% of the chips that we like at the chippy are imported. And the logistics around it are all, you know, very, very complicated, if you like.
So hold on.
We have to reinvent that.
Ton, hold on. You've been a CEO, a board level director of some amazing international meat companies. So are you arguing with yourself because you're envisaging that we should be buying local and not on a global basis? That you've been involved. So is this your learnings from the last 5-10 years?
Well, I wouldn't say that, in the sense that at the moment I'm the chairman of a beef company in Scotland, where we have fantastic local produced products that should be consumed, obviously, and enjoyed all over the country. But the problem is, it is very expensive. And the food chain and the logistics and the supply chain have all been driven over the last, let's say, 2-3 decades by the multiple retailers that always wanted to have food as cheap as possible on the shelf. And by doing that, we have actually walked away from a lot of local production, because, you know, we happen to be more expensive than somewhere else, and we started to import products from, you know, the continent or anywhere. But that's driven by retail, and what the producers obviously do, whether it's in Holland, Germany, Italy, or in the UK itself, they fulfill the demand of the retail. The retail is, you know, more or less determining what you and I will have on our plate, and it was all cost driven. It was all price driven, and the value of food itself, I think, has been underestimated a lot, because it just had to be cheap. And what people are now, and that could be a learning for all of us, not so much for myself, but for anyone, I guess, is that food is very valuable. So from a government perspective, the first strategic priority actually should be, how can I feed the nation? I mean, the Romans already knew that, right? Feed them, you know, give them food and games, if you like. So food is extremely important, and we've walked away from that. You know, we have looked at the food supply chain like any other production chain, whether it's car production or it's, you know, technological products or clothing. You know, nothing is produced anymore local. It is produced there where it is most efficient and cheap. The question is whether food should not be an exception, because it's so basic. And now we see ourselves and find ourselves in a situation where we can't get any food. So, you know, or there are at least problems and it's too expensive. So we really have to rethink, you know, about what is the value of food, and also what is the value of the business that, you know, your fresh business is actually representing. What is the value of our agricultural and farming community? Because we haven't really, you know, applauded our farmers a lot lately, did we?
Tom, well done. I'm just going to use William as an example. William, your bag of spuds, you earn the same margin as a can of Red Bull, don't you?
Probably a lot less, I think.
No,
I think
so Red Bull is making 40% margin because they have a brand. So,
yeah.
so I'm obviously slightly leading the witness here.
Yeah.
The margin that you make is
We don't make 40%, I can assure you. I mean, just to agree with Tom, I mean, a month ago, I think it was only in February, there was a government advisor basically said, we don't need British agriculture. We can import all of our food. Now, he looks a right idiot right now, doesn't he? But the fact is, in my life, I've been in the business 30 years. We've basically had continual price reductions in all that time. Whilst costs have gone up, margins are being squeezed. And the fact is, you know, it has, as Tom said, it's driven production overseas. We're importing more of our food. I think the great thing that's going to come out of this is that actually people will value local food production, and people will not take it for granted. You know, there's a generation of people that have never known a situation where they can't just go in a local store and pick up whatever they want. And this has made people realise how fragile that system is.
Okay, and so on the back of that, the likes of Scott and Mark and his members, if they can keep their positivity and ride through this scenario, they're actually potentially going to be in a far better place 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line. William,
we will be. Sorry, have I jumped over here?
No, you carry on.
Do you know what, guys? I spent all last week in the warehouse, and it was an amazing, because I didn't realise how inefficient we were. I didn't realise that we were, you know, our boxes were going out without the correct. So for me as a CEO of a small business to work on my own in a warehouse, A, it's very humbling. B, I've realised, guys, we're just doing this all wrong. So this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to change. I've addressed my team. We've come up with some ideas. We've got new packaging we're designing now. We're doing our brew bags that are going into rooms. We've got our cans of coffee that's open to the public. And we are going to just reinvent ourselves as we go along. Now, I'm a CEO of a small business, but there are 5.7 million businesses out there. So if everybody takes my lead, looks at their business, see how they can make it better, I think there's going to be a new market. There's going to be change. People will continue to eat food. We have to. We're going to continue to drink coffee. We have to. We will do. So every small business has the opportunity now to kick the tires, look at what they're doing, make themselves more efficient. And I tell you what, guys, we will come out of this storm. I promise you now, we will come out of this storm.
Fantastic. We just had a question in. William, do you know some chap called Jason?
Yeah, I think he might be related.
Yeah, so William is one of three brothers. William, who's the most handsome out of the three of you, of yourself, Jason and Andrew? I'm going to say... Okay. So Jason's just asked, he's asked the question, 50% of fruit and veg is imported. How can we in the UK become more self-sufficient? So Kate, what's your view on that? And then we'll just throw it back to William as our grower expert.
Becoming more self-sufficient?
Yeah, so we have so much product that is imported. I have a bit of a clash with this, because we had a great guy, Mark Crawford, who's the global sales and marketing director for an amazing business called Blue Skies, and the UK based, but their main site is in Ghana, and they slice and dice prep fruit, which is then air freighted back to the UK. They're the largest private employer in Ghana, 4,500 people. There's an ecosystem of 35,000 people that hang off their amazing business. And if they weren't there, God knows what would have happened to those 35,000 people. But I absolutely get Jason's point that we should be looking to be more self-sufficient in the UK. I suppose it goes back to what Scott was saying earlier, that we are going to, during this reset, we are all going to change. Could you see, Kate, people looking to be more self-sufficient and demanding more UK produce for the reasons that William has said, that when we've gone through this period, it's actually been quite difficult to get some product? Will that make people change in this reset, their thinking? I think
the problem is that the UK is a densely populated group of islands on off a sort of rather misty northern islands, and our climate and our terrain doesn't lend itself to being self-sufficient. It's also not advisable to be self-sufficient, because if you have a global trade, in effect, if your harvests fail, you have other options. The question is, how much should we import? And I think that's a very important question. And and what should we grow here, and how we should grow it. Yes, of course we should grow more. Yes, of course it's going to be more expensive. And the idea that somehow or other we've got to have cheap food is, I agree with you, Ton, it's utterly wrong. Food prices, as I said to some of our local councillors, nutritious food prices are going to rise, and that's global competition for food. They're going to rise, and it's a good thing they do. Nobody makes money out of fresh produce. Nobody does. You know, the margins are incredibly tight. And so the question we have is, how much should we import? What should we import? And given that price of nutritious food is going to rise, how are we going to enable it so that people can afford it? Because that's what we need. And if people don't have nutritious food, I'll give you a little stat, which I just think is mind-blowing. The diet you have during the first 1,000 days of your life, and that 1,000 days is from conception onwards. So the first 1,000 days of your life, the diet you have has got to be high in nutrients, otherwise your brain doesn't develop as well as it could. So there is a correlation, a direct causal relationship between the diet of mothers carrying, pregnant women and the infants until they're about 2 years old. There's a relationship between the diet they eat and GDP.
Yep.
It's astonishing, but there is. The trouble is, it's a time we have to have. Every single person in this country has to be able to have nutritious food, and some of it will be more expensive, and we've got to find also cheaper ways of getting some foods, things like lentils, most of which are imported, which are very high in nutrients, as part of our meals.
Yeah.
No, we shouldn't be self-sufficient in food. That's dangerous. That is very dangerous.
Well, it's also virtually impossible, right, to be self-sufficient, because it's simply not. Although I think that geography and climate can be overcome. If you look at very small countries such as the Netherlands itself, as well as Israel, huge developments, technological developments, and being able to do an awful lot of food exports. So I'm not, it's not always the same per country, if you like, or per geography. But where it would start, there are two things that we need to change in this country. First of all, is the consumer. The consumer needs to understand that food is valuable. They take it for granted. Only 10% of disposable income is now spent on food, whereas maybe 50 years ago it might have been 50, because people spend more on video games or sneakers or whatever. So food is extremely important. It's very valuable, and that's where it starts. If the consumer gets that somehow, then at least the retailers are not forced, or at least feel not obliged to be forced, to put food on the shelf for the cheapest possible price, and actually therefore, squeezing the whole supply chain, because it is not just the farmer that doesn't get enough for its efforts. It's also the next step in the production and in the supply chain. I mean, as I said, my beef company, we run on margins of 1%, 2%. I mean, this is not sustainable going forward. So if not everyone in the supply chain can have a decent margin, can have a decent living, can build maybe a buffer, if you like, for adverse times like we have today, then it becomes very, very difficult. But it's driven in the end by the market, it's driven by the consumer and the retailer, that we now all say, oh, they are heroes because they help us to get food. And it is true. I'm very pleased with the way they act at the moment. But at the same time, in the last 3 decades, they have actually educated the consumer that food is very, very cheap and always, available in abundance.
So Ton, here's the question, just from Jason again. Thank you, Jason. Whose responsibility is it to make food more valuable? Who will lead this in this reset? Question for you all. Far away.
Government.
Kate says government. William?
Consumers.
Mark?
I think the environment will do it.
Ooh, that's a good one. Scott?
It still frustrates me that people are queuing up for coffee in the supermarkets, and they're complaining about 3-week delivery slots where small companies like us can deliver it the following day. I'm confused. I think the consumer needs to drive this, and that's what I would say.
Yeah. Ton?
Well, eventually it has to be the consumer, but in adverse times like this, like it's a war, like there's an epidemic, like there's a financial crisis, it's simple. The government has to take its responsibility and at least make it easier for businesses to convince in the end by their offering, if you like, and their services to give the consumer the opportunity to make that choice. In the end, the consumer will have to make that choice. I can't disagree with that, but it needs to be facilitated, and we do need that leadership from the government as we speak. And I think, in all fairness, they try.
Yeah. Okay. And Ton, it's interesting you use that word choice. I always forget that the number. William might be able to help me, but the average large scale supermarket in store has something in the region of, is it 32,000 different lines?
About 30,000 SKUs, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And you go through this last couple of weeks that we've all gone, and how that has suddenly been brought down to bog paper, milk, and eggs, and we don't actually need the Parmesan cheese for either of our houses, as the joke goes from Waitrose. Do you think that the retailers, in some respects, to blame, but only because they've been chasing their dollar and their shareholders' dividend, that we have had too much choice? And the brands, I give the example of the likes of the Red Bulls, they have been allowed to have bigger margins, whilst the likes of Ton, the meat sectors, William, the fresh produce sectors have been, the margins have been constantly squeezed to try and get the consumer in to buy the staples, to then go and buy the high value items, the high margin items that's going to make the retailers more money. Tom, do you think there needs to be that complete reset within store?
Well, it has to be, because in the end, and that seems to be what is going on in our minds and seems to be in our behavior at the moment, is a trend towards more fresh, more local produce, shorter supply chains, and so on and so forth. By this reset, then we will be dependent more on people like William to support us with product, and those products in general are not branded. Those products do therefore need to create more consumer franchise, because the only reason why the brands are making more money is because the consumer wants them and demands them. The retailer can't say we don't stock Coca-Cola. The retailer can't say we don't stock, certain Procter & Gamble products or whatever you name them, because the consumer would walk away. They can, however, put nameless and private label steaks or beans or potatoes on the shelf, because the consumer doesn't recognize those brands because there are no brands. So the consumer in the end needs to understand that fresh is more important, non-branded is more important than the image that is created by advertising or any other way these images are created. And I think it will happen. I'm convinced it will happen. Smaller companies like the one that Scott is representing were popping up left, right, and center. If you would go, to Crowdcube or other places, you see all these initiatives of people coming up. And I'm pretty sure they suffer now because of this, the problem that we have, with short-term cash flow, obviously, and businesses being too small and having no buffers. But the trend already started maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And this, in my belief, will only accelerate it.
And Kate, thank you very much. She's just put in a really good quote. Retailers run margins on fresh produce. As a supermarket exec said to me once, confectionery subsidised carrots. Action needs to be taken to stop the so-called drug foods. So there you go.
I was going to say one point. We as a human race have all been guilty. We all travel a lot. We all want to eat, pineapples and all sorts of different food from all over the world. And we've driven the retailers to do what they've done. Governments tend to react to public opinion, and public opinion has been that food is cheap and readily available. So governments haven't really led on it, but I think this crisis will cause a reset in consumers' minds. They'll value food more. I think governments will have to react to that to get elected. And I think we've also seen a sort of a snapshot of what the world could be like in a low carbon economy, because we've all stopped flying around the world, we've all stopped driving as far, we're all using technology like this more, and actually it's quite good. So I think we might see more home cooking, more local production being valued. I don't think, I think we still will want to eat, we'll still want coffee. will still want bananas and things like that imported. So there is a balance, I guess. Nice dog.
I think also, guys, it's lovely to see our little farm shops and delis and butchers being supported as well. I'm seeing queues outside our butchers, distance apart, obviously, and I'm seeing some really good feedback from the little shops that are still open, particularly the farm shops. And it's brilliant to see the public supporting these. It really is. It makes my heart burst, because we are going to be around. They're the little businesses that you need to support. So yes, we need government guidance, but I think good, sensible local purchasing, and buy less, buy better quality. Don't waste the food. And I think that's probably the message, my last message to you guys.
Scott, it's not going to be your last message, because I'm going to make sure I set you up for our last message. Mark, just coming back to you, what can we in the trade do, and what can the consumer do to help your members, your contacts? Because I just get the feeling now, having just had 50 minutes with you, that actually Foodservice might be in a bloody good place after this. What can we do to help?
Well, I think that, I mean, kind of going back to my previous point about environment, I don't think, when I say environment, I don't mean it's kind of Extinction Rebellion and dreadlocks. I mean the environment we find ourselves in now. And I think that, you can't get food from the supermarkets. So you either can't get in, or when you get in there, they haven't got the thousands of lines of food that you expect. So their offering has been quite diminished. And, I'm getting a delivery from my local restaurant. He's keeping his supplier alive by basically becoming a grocer. I think that we will all, through, I guess, osmosis, we will find new ways to feed ourselves. And I think that through that, the value of better food will go up, or the belief in the value of better food amongst consumers will increase. I don't think it necessarily needs government support. I think where the government would have to come in is if the price of food goes up, then a good number of people are not going to be able to afford any food or far less nutritious food. So that's the problem. But in terms of what people should be doing, I would say look for new ways to get what you want. So if you're used to doing a local a supermarket shop, maybe speak to your local deli, your local restaurant. Can they get better quality food in than you'd get in your local supermarkets at reasonable prices. So I'd say look around for what you want, and there will be people out there providing it in new and interesting ways, and don't just assume that because that you have to queue up for 2 hours to get into a supermarket. Would be my suggestion.
Mark, well done, guys. We're in the wrap up stage now. Scott, I'm going to leave you to last, and you know why. William, can you just give a line as to what you think people should do in this situation to make a success out of it?
Well, I think, that's a difficult one. I think we've all got to adapt. We're very good as an industry at adapting. We've been doing it. We are a very fast moving industry, and it's amazing to see how much people have already adapted. So we just got to adapt and find the new opportunities. They will be there. People will eat, and they will, I think, value food more as a result of this.
Well done. Tom, to wrap up, in a line, what's your views for everyone to create success out of this reset?
Well, something against my personal feeling normally, because I don't like too much government influence in my daily life. But we have, all the things that William just said, I tend to agree. However, people have short memories. People in general can be selfish as well. So I think there needs to be some government regulation, or at least government policy and strategy to make sure that all these developments, local produce, more valuation for food, better support for farmers, better support for smaller operators, that somehow that is guaranteed by governmental policies.
Well done. Kate, what would you say to everyone, please?
Remember that this is the first of a whole series of shocks that the food system's going to have. This pandemic took 100 years to come. The next one will take probably a decade or two. And we've got climate change. And I hope you're right, Tom, we haven't got Brexit, but if we have, that's another shock to the system. Okay. And therefore, I think there's three things that people need to do at a household level, at a business level, and at a national level. One is preparedness, and we were really ill prepared for this at every level. Preparedness, what response we're going to do before the crisis hits, and also how are we going to recover from this? And I think that's true at a household level, a business level, and a city level. We are going to have, at the end of this, we are going to have in this city and other cities, a lot of people who have been malnourished for several months. That will have an effect.
Kate, thank you. Scott, just to wrap up, I'm going to put my hand up and say I will go online this afternoon and buy some of your coffee. Are the panelists, are you going to do the same? Are you going to join me and buy some of Scott's coffee?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right,
I'll
Scott,
try to find it. Yeah.
Scott, over to you. Tell us about your coffee, where we can buy it.
Well, first of all, guys, my grandparents used to talk to me about the Blitz, and they gave me stories about the whole country come together during the Blitz. I didn't really understand what that meant. I was too young. But do you know what, guys? I am so proud to be part of this country, because everyone I've spoken to, everyone I've been dealing with, have all supported my little business. And do you know what? If this is the true British human spirit, I'm so proud to be part of that. So look, I'll finish on, I'll get a plug for my company. Just Google Paddy and Scott's plural. PaddyandScottsPlural.co.uk. The brew bags are amazing. Go for it. They're fabulous. We do them in decaf. We also do them in leaded. All of our coffee is grown on our little farm, or majority of it. So you're also supporting 526 children in Kenya and a family over in Meru, where we farm our coffee. And you'll also help this great little business get back on its feet when we get through the other end. Thank you, everybody, for the positivity.
Guys, thank you very much. And just to wrap up, we've got our next webinar planned for this Friday afternoon. We've got an amazing chef. We've got a TV personality. We've got a guy from the crisp industry and another guy to be announced. We've had over 1,000 people looking at this on the various platforms. We could not do this without you and for your support with Beanstalk.Global. Thank you to all of our speakers. I just love the way that they only met literally 2 minutes before we threw this all together, and you look what we got out of it, and the passion that's coming out of the Q&A sessions has been fantastic. So we better all go off now and buy some of Scott's amazing coffee. Everyone, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Right,
Take care.
guys.
Well done,
Stay
everybody.
safe.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks,
Excellent. Well done, everyone. Well done.